There's something I need to tell you about avoidant attachment that most relationship experts won't discuss openly, and it's going to change how you understand these individuals forever. While everyone focuses on their fear of intimacy and commitment issues, there's a deeper, more insidious wound that avoidants carry, one that they never truly heal from, and one that continues to poison every relationship they enter, sometimes for decades. This hidden wound isn't just about childhood trauma or fear of abandonment. It's about a fundamental character flaw that develops when someone becomes so skilled at avoiding emotional pain that they lose the capacity for genuine human connection. What I'm about to share with you will help you recognize when someone's avoidant behavior has crossed the line from attachment issues that can be worked through into character defects that make healthy relationships impossible. The critical distinction we need to make is between genuine avoidant patterns stemming from legitimate trauma and fear, which can potentially be healed with authentic remorse, accountability, and willingness to change, versus behaviors that stem from selfishness, manipulation, and a fundamental lack of empathy. The latter reveals character defects that transcend attachment styles and indicate someone who should never be given access to your emotional world again. The hidden wound I'm referring to is what I call emotional entitlement. The deeply ingrained belief that they deserve love, understanding, and forgiveness without having to reciprocate the same level of vulnerability, accountability, or emotional investment. This wound festers because it's never challenged. People around them consistently make excuses for their behavior, attributing everything to their attachment style rather than recognizing when they're dealing with fundamental character flaws. This emotional entitlement manifests in ways that reveal someone who lacks the basic empathy, integrity, and respect necessary for healthy relationships. When an avoidant carries this hidden wound, they develop a sense of superiority that allows them to justify treating others as disposable while expecting to be treated as irreplaceable. They believe their emotional comfort takes precedence over everyone else's emotional well-being, and they've learned to weaponize their attachment style to avoid accountability. The first way this hidden wound reveals itself is through their treatment of reconciliation as a privilege they're granting you rather than an opportunity they need to earn. When someone with this deep emotional entitlement returns to your life, they approach it with the expectation that you should be grateful for their presence. They act as if their willingness to give you another chance is a generous gift rather than recognizing that they're the ones who need to prove their worthiness for a second opportunity. This twisted perspective comes from years of having their avoidant behavior excused and accommodated. They've learned that disappearing, emotional unavailability, and hurtful actions can be forgiven simply by claiming they were overwhelmed or needed space. This creates a dangerous precedent where they believe they can inflict emotional damage without facing genuine consequences, and their return is somehow doing you a favor. The person operating from this hidden wound will return with expectations rather than humility. They expect you to have moved on from the pain they caused, to welcome them back without requiring them to address their previous behavior, and to focus on the future rather than processing the past. This reveals someone who fundamentally believes they shouldn't have to take responsibility for the impact of their choices on others. What makes this particularly toxic is how they frame their return. Instead of acknowledging the harm they caused and expressing genuine remorse, they position themselves as being magnanimous enough to overlook your flaws and give you another chance. They might say things like, "I'm willing to try again if you can stop being so needy," or "I've decided to give us another shot, but you need to understand, I need my space." This language reveals someone who sees themselves as the prize, rather than someone who needs to earn back trust and respect. The second manifestation of this hidden wound is their inability to tolerate your emotional responses to their behavior. Someone carrying this deep emotional entitlement believes that their actions exist in a vacuum, that they can behave however they want without having to deal with the natural consequences of their choices. When you express hurt, disappointment, or anger about their behavior, they don't see it as valid feedback about the impact of their actions. Instead, they see it as an unreasonable demand on their emotional resources. This is why they consistently invalidate your feelings, calling you too sensitive, dramatic, or unreasonable. They're not just avoiding accountability, they're actively resenting you for having emotional responses to their hurtful behavior. In their mind, your feelings are an inconvenience that interferes with their emotional comfort, and they believe they have the right to dismiss emotions that make them uncomfortable. This invalidation serves a crucial function for someone with this hidden wound. It allows them to maintain their sense of superiority by positioning themselves as rational and you as emotional. It prevents them from having to confront the reality that their behavior causes genuine harm to people who care about them. Most importantly, it enables them to continue the same harmful patterns without having to change, because they can always blame your overreaction rather than examining their own behavior. The person operating from this emotional entitlement has convinced themselves that impact doesn't matter, only intent matters. They believe that because they didn't explicitly intend to cause harm, any harm that resulted is either exaggerated or somehow your fault for being too sensitive. This perspective reveals someone who lacks the fundamental empathy necessary for healthy relationships, because they can't or won't acknowledge that their actions have real consequences for real people. What's particularly insidious is how this invalidation destroys your ability to trust your own emotional responses. When someone consistently tells you that your feelings are wrong, unreasonable, or excessive, you begin to question your own reality. This is a form of emotional abuse that creates trauma bonds rather than healthy attachment, and it ensures that you'll constantly defer to their judgment about what constitutes appropriate emotional responses. The third way this hidden wound manifests is through their strategic use of vulnerability as a manipulation tactic rather than genuine emotional sharing. Someone with deep emotional entitlement has learned that selective vulnerability can be used to control others' responses to their behavior. They don't share their feelings to create intimacy or connection. They share them to avoid accountability and manipulate your empathy. This might look like sharing stories about their difficult childhood when confronted about their hurtful behavior, or suddenly becoming emotional about their fear of abandonment when you try to establish boundaries. They've learned that people with healthy empathy will respond to perceived pain with patience and understanding, so they weaponize their supposed vulnerability to avoid consequences for their actions. The key difference between genuine vulnerability and manipulative vulnerability is timing and context. Genuine vulnerability happens organically during moments of connection and is shared to deepen intimacy. Manipulative vulnerability appears strategically during moments of confrontation and is used to derail conversations about accountability. Someone with this hidden wound has perfected the art of using their emotional pain as a shield against having to acknowledge the emotional pain they've caused others. This strategic vulnerability also serves to maintain their victim identity. They position themselves as the wounded party who deserves compassion and understanding, while simultaneously avoiding any responsibility for the wounds they've inflicted on others. They want you to see them as someone who has suffered and therefore deserves special treatment, while completely ignoring the suffering they've caused you. The person operating from this emotional entitlement believes that their pain justifies their behavior, while your pain is an overreaction that needs to be managed. They expect unlimited patience and understanding for their emotional wounds, while offering none in return for yours. This fundamental imbalance reveals someone who sees relationships as existing to serve their emotional needs rather than as mutual partnerships requiring reciprocal care and consideration. The fourth manifestation of this hidden wound is their complete inability to provide genuine accountability or authentic remorse. Someone with deep emotional entitlement believes that acknowledgement of wrongdoing diminishes their worth, so they've developed sophisticated ways to appear accountable while actually avoiding responsibility. They offer what I call performance accountability, grand gestures and vague apologies designed to look like genuine remorse without requiring them to confront the specific reality of their harmful behavior. This performance accountability might include dramatic declarations of love, expensive gifts, or elaborate romantic gestures, but it never includes the specific acknowledgement of harm caused or concrete plans for behavioral change. They want the benefits of appearing accountable without the discomfort of actually examining their behavior and its impact on others. This combination of adventure and stability is incredibly attractive to avoidants because it allows them to experience the excitement and novelty they crave while feeling emotionally safe. They don't have to worry that your spontaneous nature will lead to emotional outbursts or relationship drama. They can relax and enjoy the adventure because they trust your emotional stability. The seventh unconscious desire that creates irresistible attraction in avoidance is encountering someone who demonstrates genuine curiosity and interest in their inner world without being invasive or pushy. This means you ask thoughtful questions about their thoughts, feelings, and experiences, but you don't pressure them to share more than they're comfortable with. You show genuine interest in understanding them as a person, not just as a romantic partner. This curiosity appeals to the avoidant's unconscious need to be truly seen and understood. Many avoidants have experienced relationships where partners were more interested in changing them than understanding them. But when you demonstrate genuine curiosity about their thoughts, their past experiences, their dreams and goals, their unique perspective on life, you're showing that you value them as an individual. This curiosity also extends to being interested in their autonomous activities and interests. You ask about their hobbies, their work, their friendships, their individual goals and dreams. You show that you see them as a complete person beyond just their role in the relationship. This is incredibly attractive because it confirms that you're not trying to make them into an extension of yourself or your relationship. Your genuine curiosity also means you listen without judgment when they do share. You don't try to fix their problems or give unsolicited advice. You don't use their vulnerabilities against them later. You simply listen with genuine interest and appreciation for their willingness to share. This creates a safe space for them to gradually open up more, which deepens the connection in a way that feels natural and unforced. The eighth unconscious desire that makes avoidants feel irresistibly drawn to someone is encountering a person who embodies healthy boundaries while remaining warm and loving. This means you're clear about what you will and won't accept in a relationship, but you communicate these boundaries with kindness and understanding rather than anger or demand. You don't compromise your values or needs for the sake of keeping the peace, but you also don't use your boundaries as weapons or manipulation tactics. This healthy boundary setting is incredibly attractive to avoidants because it demonstrates that you have self-respect and won't allow yourself to be treated poorly. They unconsciously respect people who know their own worth and won't settle for less than they deserve. At the same time, your warm, loving communication style shows that you're not trying to control or punish them. You're simply being clear about your needs and expectations. Your healthy boundaries also mean you don't enable their avoidant behaviors or make excuses for them. If they're being emotionally unavailable or treating you poorly, you address it directly but kindly. You don't ignore red flags or pretend everything is fine when it's not. This is attractive because it shows you're paying attention and you care enough about the relationship to address problems when they arise. These boundaries also extend to maintaining your own life and interests even when you're in a relationship. You don't lose yourself in the connection or make them the center of your universe. You maintain your friendships, your hobbies, your personal goals and dreams. This is incredibly attractive to avoidants because it shows you're not going to become dependent on them for your happiness or sense of identity. The ninth unconscious desire that creates magnetic attraction in avoidance is encountering someone who demonstrates emotional intelligence and empathy without being overly emotional or reactive. This means you can understand and respond to their emotional needs and communication style without losing your own emotional center. You're sensitive to their feelings and reactions, but you don't take everything personally or become overwhelmed by their emotions. And this emotional intelligence allows you to read between the lines of their communication, understanding what they're really saying or feeling even when they're not expressing it directly. You can sense when they need space without them having to explicitly ask for it. You can recognize when they're feeling overwhelmed or stressed and respond with understanding rather than taking it as a personal rejection. Your empathy also means you can understand their perspective and validate their feelings without necessarily agreeing with all their actions. You can say things like, "I understand that you need time to process this," or "I can see why that would feel overwhelming for you," without making them feel judged or criticized. This validation is incredibly attractive because it shows you see them as a complete person with valid emotions and needs. But your emotional intelligence also means you don't lose yourself in trying to manage their emotions or fix their problems. You can be understanding and supportive without becoming codependent or enabling. You maintain your own emotional center while being responsive to theirs. The 10th and final unconscious desire that makes avoidance feel irresistibly drawn to someone is encountering a person who embodies authentic self-love and self-care without being selfish or self-centered. This means you genuinely like and appreciate yourself, you take care of your physical and emotional needs, and you treat yourself with kindness and respect. And this self-love isn't narcissistic or selfish, it's healthy and balanced. This authentic self-love is incredibly attractive to avoidance because it demonstrates that you don't need them to complete you or make you feel worthy. You already know your own value and worth, and you're not looking for external validation to feel good about yourself. This takes pressure off them to be responsible for your emotional well-being and happiness. Your self-care also means you're not willing to accept treatment that doesn't align with your values or needs. You don't stay in situations that are consistently draining or harmful to your well-being. You prioritize your own mental and emotional health, which is attractive because it shows you're not going to become a burden or drain on their energy. This self-love also extends to having confidence in your own thoughts, feelings, and perspectives. You don't constantly second-guess yourself or look to others for validation. You trust your own judgment and intuition, which is incredibly attractive because it shows you're emotionally mature and self-aware. Understanding these deep unconscious desires can help you recognize whether you naturally embody these qualities or whether you might want to develop them for your own personal growth and relationship success. But remember, these insights should only be applied with someone who has demonstrated they possess the basic character qualities necessary for healthy relationships. Never compromise your standards or accept poor treatment from someone who exhibits the character defects I outlined earlier, regardless of how attracted they might be to you. You deserve a partner who treats you with basic respect, empathy, and consideration, even during difficult times. Don't sacrifice your standards or compromise your worth for someone who has proven themselves incapable of meeting the minimum requirements for healthy relationships. Show no mercy to those who have shown no mercy to you. The person who truly deserves your love and attention will appreciate and reciprocate these qualities naturally, creating the kind of deep, meaningful connection you deserve.